In the middle of all the recent noise and speculation, we've got a fresh bit of news that came in just about an hour before we hit record. And honestly, even before we get into the usual football chat, this one's worth talking about. There's a player, and you'll know who I'm talking about soon enough, who's now at the heart of a potential contract shakeup. His current deal is ticking down, and the club, well, they're getting serious about keeping him. We're talking about a real offer, a proper deal on the table with a decent pay rise and a 3-year extension that would lock him in until the summer of 2028. And what's interesting is just a short while ago, the general vibe was that he was off it. Done. Moving on. Other clubs had already started sniffing around, testing the waters. But here we are, tables turning. The club clearly sees value in keeping him around. And even more than that, they seem willing to put the money where their mouth is. Now, let's not kid ourselves, this isn't a guaranteed fairy tale. If he stays, he's not walking straight into the starting 11. There's another player, a bigger name coming back into the fold, and our guy would still be second choice. That's the hard truth of it, but that doesn't make this offer meaningless. Far from it. Today might just be a pivotal moment for this young lad, a decision day, one of those 4 Kinderode kind of days that'll shape what comes next. And here's the twist, it's not like he's been playing badly. Quite the opposite, actually. In the last few matches, he's put in decent shifts, shown some real grit, and proved he can step up when needed. It's that kind of form that's probably got the manager thinking twice. Maybe even thinking, he's not just cover, he's a real option. But still, when you look at it from his side, you gotta wonder, does he really want to spend another few seasons being the backup week in, week out, waiting for a knock or a suspension to get minutes? That's a hard pill to swallow for any a player, especially when you know you got more to give. I'm a bit surprised, to be honest. I always thought he had bigger plans, maybe a starting spot elsewhere playing every weekend. But now with this deal on the table, it's looking more like he's got a real decision to make. The club seems committed. They've shifted their stance. Gone from possibly letting him go to doing what they can to hold on. And why not? If you've got a player who knows the system, understands the dressing room, and doesn't kick off about game time, that's gold in a long season. Especially with the way fixtures pile up. And let's not forget, the player ahead of him, he's not exactly made of iron. There's every chance injuries or rotation could open the door again. So we're at that strange place where it feels like everything's up in the air. One moment he's halfway out the door. The next, there's a fresh deal being prepped with the promise of a pay bump and a stable future. From the club side, it makes sense. They've likely done the math, looked at the market, realized that replacing a dependable backup isn't cheap, especially not one who's already settled, already up to speed with how the team plays. But here's the thing, even if they're throwing more cash into the mix, that doesn't mean he'll say yes. Because at some point, it's not just about money, it's about ambition, about pride, about how a player sees himself. He might be looking at the offer thinking, it's good money, but do I want to spend 3 more years waiting? And that's a fair question. Especially for someone who's not getting any younger, who's maybe thinking this next move needs to be the right one, not just for his career, but for his family as well. You've got to factor that in too. There's talk he's recently had a kid, and that changes everything. You start thinking differently about stability, about what's best for your family, about moving across the country or even abroad. And let's be honest, moving isn't easy. Uprooting everything, settling somewhere new, especially when there's no guarantee you'll be starting there either. That's a gamble, one that could go either way, and you'd hate to make a move only to find yourself in the exact same position. 6 months down the line, benched, frustrated, and far from home. Now there's also been chatter about clubs from Croatia, the Major League Soccer, maybe even down south in the English Championship. Options are definitely out there, but are they better? That's the big question. A lot of those clubs might offer him the minutes, sure, but are they offering Champions League nights, big games at home, a team that's actually in contention for trophies? Probably not. And look, there's a reason the club's pushing to keep him. They've seen enough to believe he's worth the investment. The fans, they're split. Always have been. He's the type of player who divides opinion. One week he's a solid option. The next he's getting pelters for a dodgy pass or a poor bit of defending. That inconsistency is part of what makes this whole thing so tricky. There's not a clear universal answer, just a whole lot of what ifs. Remember the match where he got hammered for being at fault for a goal early on. People were fuming. Then not long after he pops up with a goal himself, bit of a deflection granted, But suddenly the tone changes. He's back in favor back. In the good books. It's a roller coaster with him. That's what makes this whole debate around the contract even more fascinating. Because you're not just talking about a player, you're talking about a perception. And from what I've heard even within the club, there's a bit of back and forth about what to do. Do you give him a pay rise knowing he might never become your first choice left back? Or do you let him go and risk struggling to replace that depth? Tough call either way. There's also a bit of noise about how much this new contract might be worth. Nothing confirmed obviously, but folk are speculating figures around 15 to 20 grand a week. That's no pocket change, especially for someone who's not starting every week. But again, it's all relative. If the top lads in that position are pulling in 40 or even 50 grand a week, then suddenly that 15 doesn't seem so wild. And apparently the club knows they've got to shell out something decent if they want to keep that part of the squad strong. Negotiations, as always, come down to leverage. And right now the player's got he's in form. He's got interest. And he's not desperate. That puts him in a solid spot to push for the best deal possible. Whether that ends up being at this club or somewhere else, that's what we're about to find out. Now, let's talk honestly, not just about the club or the money, but about the player himself. Because here's where it gets interesting. I'll admit it straight up. I've never been his biggest fan. That's not to say he's a bad player, far from it, but his time at the club's been a bit of a roller coaster. First season, it was stop-start. Second season, he found a bit of rhythm, started looking like he belonged. But even then, it never felt like he fully clicked under the previous management. There was always this sense of almost like he was just one step away from putting it all together, but never quite got there. Especially in Europe. That's where things really went sideways. Big nights, big pressure, and that's when the criticism came in heavy. Some of it fair, some of it probably a bit harsh. But that's football, isn't it? You either shine or you get questioned. But here's the thing. Through it all, I've always thought he had the makings of a solid backup. A reliable second choice. Not someone you build your backline around, but someone you can trust to step in when needed. And you need players like that. Not every squad member has to be a superstar. Sometimes consistency and attitude go a long way. The question now, though, is whether he's okay with that role. Can he live with being number two? Because let's be real. He's not getting past the current starter unless something changes drastically. He's already behind in the pecking order for his national team too. So it's not like he's walking into any top side as a guaranteed starter. And that's part of what makes this so tricky. If he accepts that this is who he is, a solid, dependable squad player, then this new deal makes all the sense in the world. But if he still sees himself as a player who should be starting week in, week out, then maybe he's better off looking elsewhere. This kind of thing isn't easy for any player. No one grows up dreaming of being second choice. No one sits down with their agent and says, find me a team where I can sit on the bench most weekends. But the reality is not every career plays out the way you imagine. And when you've got a young family, as he now does, sometimes the priorities shift. Stability and familiarity. They start to matter more than minutes, especially when you're not guaranteed those minutes at another club either. There was a bit of chat recently about Zagreb. And it's a decent city. The kind of place you could see a player enjoying life off the pitch. But the footballing side, that's murkier. Their stadium's a bit tired. The league doesn't offer the same visibility. And while they might be in the Champions League next season, there's no telling if they'll be back the year after. That's a risk. You could uproot your whole life, chase European football, and then find yourself knocked out in qualifiers or shipped out on loan within a year. And then what, you're back to square one only now, you're doing it in a language you don't speak miles away from home. Other options, the MLS maybe, England perhaps, a few clubs sniffing around in Europe. But from what I've heard, none of them are offering the same money, the same package, or the same level of respect that he's getting right now. And that matters too. Sometimes just knowing you're wanted, even as a backup, can weigh heavier than a vague promise of a bigger role somewhere else. Especially when you've already lived through the ups and downs of proving yourself. And here's another layer, the Champions League. Even if he's not a guaranteed starter, he'd still be part of that squad. That's a big deal. That's a level of prestige you don't walk away from lightly. Because if he leaves, chances are he's not walking into another team playing in Europe's top competition. So even being on the bench, even coming in for the odd game, that's still exposure, that's still experience. And that's still value. All of that's got to be running through his head right now. The club's making their move. The offers, There, he's got options. But this might be one of those moments where no choice is perfect. You either stay, play a bit less, but keep your spot at a big club, or you roll the dice, move on, and hope it works out. It's easy for us on the outside to say, take the deal or go find game time. But it's not that simple. Because this isn't just about football anymore. This is about a man, a father, a professional trying to map out the next few years of his life. And that's why this whole situation feels so finely balanced. The part that surprised most people, myself included, is how quickly the club seemed to change their tune. A while back, it really felt like they were preparing to move on, maybe even happy to cash in if the right offer came along. And now suddenly they're the ones chasing him. That's a twist, no doubt about it. Shows you how fast things move in football. One or two good games, a bit of public backing from the manager, and boom, yes, everything shifts. But let's not forget that's also part of the game. Negotiations are always about timing. Maybe the club hoped to sell him, didn't get the bids they wanted, saw his form pick up and thought, you know what, let's keep him around. Or maybe they never really wanted him gone, but were waiting to see how he reacted under pressure. Either way, it's clear now that they're serious about keeping him. And the numbers getting tossed around, look, nobody knows the exact figures, but people are speculating anywhere from 15 to 20 grand a week. That's proper money. Not superstar wages, but definitely not backup scraps either. That's a sign of respect. A sign that they see him as someone worth investing in. There were some wild claims earlier that he was asking for 25 grand a week, but from everything I've heard, that's not true. That number was never seriously on the table. Still, it shows how much attention this situation's been getting. People talking, rumors flying. Now, if you look around the league and ask, who's getting paid what in that position, you start to understand why this deal matters. Some top-tier fullbacks are earning 40, 50, even 70 grand a week. So for a dependable squad player to be on 15 or 20, that's actually not bad at all. It fits the wage structure, it keeps everyone happy, and it shows players lower down the depth chart that good behavior and solid performances will be rewarded. But again, and I keep coming back to this, none of that matters if the player doesn't believe in the role he's being offered. Because no amount of money makes up for sitting on the bench if your heart's not in it. He has to believe that staying is the right move, not just financially, but for his career and his personal happiness. And finally, let's not pretend this isn't being watched closely by his teammates. These guys talk. They see who gets new deals, who's in favor, who's getting paid. And they'll be watching how this unfolds, especially the younger lads. They'll be asking themselves, what do I need to do to get looked after here? And if the message coming from the club is work hard, be patient, step up when called, a pawn and we'll take care of you, then that sends the right signal. So here we are, no easy answers, no guarantees, just a player with a big decision, a club with a decent offer, and a whole lot of eyes watching to see what happens next. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. The green half of Glasgow is buzzing once more. Whispers from the wind suggest that Mohamed ELYOUNOUSSI could be on his way back to Celtic Park, a name that still echoes around the terraces of Parkhead. Moa ELYOUNOUSSI's time in the hoops may not be ancient history after all. With reports emerging that the Norwegian winger is unhappy in Denmark and Celtic quietly monitoring his situation, fans are starting to dream once again. Could the prodigal winger return to where he once dazzled? ELYOUNOUSSI, now plying his trade at FC Copenhagen, has had a mixed spell in the Danish Superliga. After signing a 4-year deal with the club in July 2023, expectations were high. But word on the street is that things haven't quite clicked for the former Southampton man. Despite flashes of brilliance, murmurs of dissatisfaction and frustration with his role have surfaced. Some sources close to the player hint that he's open to a move, especially if it means donning the green and white once more. And where better to find his spark again than under the Celtic lights. Supporters will remember his time in Glasgow fondly. Between 2019 and 2021, ELYOUNOUSSI made a serious impact in Celtic colours. He scored vital goals, delivered in big moments, and earned a reputation as a hard-working, technically gifted winger with a flair for the spectacular. The chemistry he shared with the squad and with the fans was undeniable. And now, with Celtic potentially seeking reinforcements for the wing ahead of another Champions League campaign, The timing might just be perfect. Of course, the deal is far from done. There's no official bid yet, and Copenhagen will be keen to keep hold of their experienced international unless the right offer comes along. Sources close to the Danish club suggest they wouldn't stand in his way if his heart was set on a return to Glasgow. And make no mistake, Celtic boss Brendan Rodgers is known to value experience blended with hunger. ELYOUNOUSSI ticks both boxes. With the player still only 30 and eager to prove himself at the highest level, a move back to Celtic makes more sense than ever. As the summer window approaches, the rumor mill won't slow down. But for now, Celtic fans can dare to dream. Could Moi ELYOUNOUSSI's story in Glasgow be getting a second chapter? Or is this just another tale of what could have been? One thing's for sure, the next few weeks will be crucial, and if you hear a roar from the east end of Glasgow, you'll know exactly why. Hello, fan! Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.